And we're back with some more oxygen not included. And today is going to be a design day. Reason being, we have an awful lot of plastic over here. Hey, get out of the way, get out of the way. Yep, there you go. We have got 16 tons of plastic there, plenty more plastic lying around the place. In fact, up to 47.9 tons of plastic. So now we have to design a device that will turn that plastic into power by melting it. You know what? Let's get started. This here is a save that was sent in to me by Carlos. They made their own little plastic boiler, just to demonstrate. It's made actually on the same save. They took my last save and they just sort of tacked this onto it with a little bit of debug menus. This here is what you would call a batch boiler. As in, it does it one chunk at a time. It's not continuous. A continuous boiler would have a continuous inflow, continuous outflow. This does batches. What that means is, when this starts to run low on gas, it's going to request some more. Give it a minute. There we go. It's noticed that there's not enough gas in here, so it opens these doors. And then the gas that's over here, there's 40 kilos of sour gas. That starts flowing through to the other side. Now the plastic comes down here, flows across this, and rotates through this section. There's a bunch of molten lead in here, and that melts the plastic until it turns into naphtha. That naphtha then immediately flashes into sour gas, and then that sour gas flows over here. And then there's a bunch of aquatuners, and they're pumping supercoolant, and the supercoolant comes down here and cools it down. Now, this would be what you call a batch boiler because it does it in batches instead of continuous, but it's also a brute force cooler. As in, it's just using brute force. Instead of recycling any of the heat and cold that's being used, it just basically dumps in a whole bunch of heat here. In fact, actually, where is the heat coming from? Maybe I'm messing this up. Oh, wait. Yeah, it's on top of a bunch of boiling hot obsidian. So there's a whole bunch of heat down here. The plastic melts on top of this, and that's why this is so hot. It's 1,000 degrees. You got a little bit over how high it needs to be. And then it comes up here, and these pipes up here are made of steel. They have supercoolant flowing through it, and that supercoolant basically just dumps masses of chill into it. There's a tiny little bit of a sort of a counterflow going on here, but mostly this is a brute force batch boiler. I was thinking we'd try something a little bit more, a little bit different. Let me show you another example. Not quite identical, but this old Nelly is, well, it's ancient and it's showing its age quite badly, but it's a good example of what we're demonstrating here. This is a continuous boiler design instead of batch. It basically has 9.4 kilos of petroleum going through here, and that comes down here, gets turned into sour gas. That sour gas goes all the way up here, around town, gets turned into the methane, and then gets dumped over here where it eventually gets pumped into the gas pumps. Now this is, of course, a much larger contraption, but you notice it's using two thermo aquatuners, and it's boiling 9.4 kilos of this stuff into natural gas to provide, well, just gargantuan amounts of power. But as well as being a continuous boiler, it's also recycling all the temperature. For example, this oil is coming in here, and it starts off quite hot at, well, room temperature 110 degrees, and then by the time it gets to the bottom, oh god, this game is actually a bit tricky, 2, 3, 4, it comes down, it's about 500 degrees by the time it gets down here. So we're recycling a whole bunch of the heat that's coming out of this, because when that drops down here, it gets flashed into sour gas. The sour gas, which is, well, 500 plus degrees, starts to flow back up against all these pipes, which means it's preheating all the oil coming in. We're basically recycling heat so we don't need to use as much to get the desired result. Then it comes all the way down here, and it gets turned into frozen liquid methane. Well, the liquid methane gets dumped over here, where it then heats up just this tiny scooch to turn into natural gas. That natural gas, which is super cold, it's, what, minus 175 degrees? That goes up here, counterflowing against the sour gas that's coming in. So it's pre-chilling this sour gas while warming up the outgoing natural gas. So the natural gas leaves at 200 degrees. Despite being cooled down to minus 175, a whole bunch of that is basically recycled back into the system. So this sort of method allows you to use very little power, which means you're getting more power out than the amount you put in. It's not absolutely necessary, it just depends how efficient you're trying to be about it. However, this is a giant, bulky one. This here is a teeny tiny little one designed to fit into a mini base. However, this can only process about 1 kilo per second. This is limited to 945 grams. But so long as we process only 1 kilo per second, what happens is you're able to heat it up in its pipes above its transition point, and it won't phase change in the pipes. This allows you to, well, definitely compactify things down an awful lot. Now, unfortunately, this design is not perfect because it was built around a hydrogen vent. This was a very tiny map, don't judge. But what I think we want to do, get a plastic boiler that can boil 1 kilo of plastic per second, but I want it to be switchable on and off. I want to make it very convenient. You see, I want to make a design that someone can actually use. I don't want to make some one-off design that no one will ever use before. I would like to make something that's potentially has a use case. It'll be niche, but preferably it would have a use case that other people could use it. So a 1 kilo per second boiler, like one like this, works pretty okay. It's solid once it's on. The problem is the boot up process in this is very complex. Or, well, it's a pain in the butt. Not complex, just annoying. So what I'd like to do is make a design that you can turn on and off, and it's just pretty easy to set up. A set it and forget it sort of design that anybody could utilize. That boils plastic. Yeah. Let's get on to a test map, shall we? Wait. One last thing I should cover is this thingy here. This is a super mini sour gas boiler. We're not going to be making anything, like there's a whole bunch of weird tricks going on here to make this thing work. Like, the sour gas comes down here and it's inside these two airflow tiles when it turns into methane and sulfur. And the methane magically teleports up diagonally in here and the sulfur comes at the bottom where it's picked up by the auto sweeper. So there's tricks like that you can do. I tend to avoid those. Originally, I avoided those to try and make sure that guides would stay relevant. But now it's just more of a thing I like to do because I prefer to not use magic too much in these things. I like to keep them pretty solid. This here is the test map for building stuff. It's basically a map where we removed everything, just replaced the whole lot with neutronium. Makes it easier to design stuff. And then you can just dig yourself out a nice section and figure out what you'd like. The plan is, well, fairly straightforward. We have to take this plastic, and then we have to heat it up to 159.9 degrees, at which point it turns into liquid naphtha, which is unfortunately very viscous and hard to work with. But that's okay. Then we keep heating that up until it hits its vaporization point of 539-ish degrees, and that turns into sour gas. Then that 500 degrees sour gas, we just have to chill down to minus 161 to get ourselves liquid methane. Well, probably minus 165 or so, but whatever. Then we'll take that liquid methane and we'll just heat it up a tiny scooch, and it turns into natural gas. And done. Problem solved. And we just have to do it 1 kilo at a time in a very reusable package that should be hopefully easy to set up and not too big. No problems with that whatsoever. Okay, so first we have to figure out how to melt the plastic. And normally when I'm melting solids, what I'll do is I'll put metal tile, insulated tile, metal tile, insulated tile, run a conveyor rail through it, and then we'd have some hot item counterflowing back. So probably the natural gas... No, actually... Yeah, the natural gas would probably be... Its final step would be flowing past here to melt the plastic. Though we need some way of prepping the system. So plastic comes down here, and if it can't melt by the time it hits the bottom, it rotates back up. We'll have a liquid pump to collect it. We might squeeze this in a tile later, but squeezing it down and making it smaller is something we'll worry about afterwards. Now, once we get it into a pipe, that means it's a liquid, and if we're doing it 1 kilo at a time, that means we don't have to worry about it breaking in the pipe. Since these are 10 kilo pipes, anything below 1 kilo means even if it phase changes, so if it swaps from naphtha to gas, sour gas in the pipe doesn't care. So, how are we going to arrange that? Initially, I was thinking we would just pump the liquid down here, put a meter valve on it to 1 kilo per second just to make sure it's hitting the required amount. This would pour down here and we would set up just a little bit of a counterflow of sour gas. But then I realized something. How do we preheat this plastic from a cold system? I want to be able to start this up from normal, so I'm going to need to put the heat source right beside here so that this can be prepped. So that means this aquatuner needs to be somewhere close to the bottom of this, which, that can be arranged a little bit better, and we're compactifying a bit. Like, this is assuming any of this works. The plan is that the plastic comes down here, and it'll sort of rotate around in this section, and if it doesn't heat from the counterflow that we're going to put through here, it'll pass over to this section and get heated up by this metal tile, which will be touching our hot box. That should hopefully melt it. The question is, will that immediately... Oh... Actually, what happens if it turns into not sour gas? What happens if it melts, and when it melts, it doesn't come out this side, it comes out the other side? That could be a problem. Also, that would... Oh, we do have the potential to turn that into sour gas. A little bit more modifications. There. We just move the metal up 1 tile. That way, if it turns into naphtha, it should fall down right here, as opposed to going into this section. And at the same time, it'll be removed from the rest of this, so it can't end up touching it for long enough to flash it into sour gas. In theory, I mean, this all still needs a whole bunch of testing. This is just preliminary outlines of an idea of a design. So, in theory, assuming this gets turned into naphtha, that naphtha will get pumped up here, dropped down here, land on a hot plate. Hot plate will turn it into sour gas, and the sour gas will get pushed up here. Now, we're going to use the bead liquid pump method. What that means is, when this drops out a blob of liquid, if you put a mesh tile below it, what happens is it sticks to the side of the walls, and forces its way down, pushing the gas up. This will allow us to pump the gas out of there sort of powerlessly. It's just nice. It's not cheaty. It's just, you know, taking advantage of some of the laws of physics. Now, that gets us boiling hot sour gas up here. Now we need to chill it. So this needs to put down some sort of ice section. So this is going to be a heat section, but it's also going to be a cooling section. That heat needs to, the cold needs to go somewhere, and that sour gas is going to go there to get turned into methane. So, recycling an older plan, what we do is we pump the gas out of here. We're going to have to go through a counterflow, and then it's going to get cooled down here. We'll have this aquatuner dump its chill into this section, and then there's two things you have to do when you're running one of these. Either A, you have to add more heat into the system, because you're not being efficient enough with it, or two, you're being so efficient you have to add on a steam turbine to bleed off some heat. So it's one or the other. It's usually best to go with the liquid tepidizer method because you can usually counteract for an awful lot of missing heat if you do it that way. Now, what we need to do is come up with some way for this gas to counterflow through all of this outcoming methane. So what I was thinking was we put in a little plumbing thing here. We put in a liquid valve. And then we have that liquid valve. No, I don't want sandstone. Give me this rock. We have that. Filter it out at, say, 1 kg per second, and then we send that counterflowing against the incoming gas somehow. This is, yeah, it looks very similar to the mini boiler design I've made before, but I think it needs some more tweaks. All that happens here is this liquid's going to come out of here, counterflow through here, flowing against the incoming gas. That should help cool down the incoming gas and heat up the outgoing liquid so we're not wasting as much energy. And then that liquid, which should still be about 200 degrees, should come through here and hopefully help melt the plastic, is the theory. Now, of course, this still needs an awful lot of tweaking. This is just the basic idea. This is going to mutate as we go along, and it'll probably become, hopefully, cleaner, but we're going to need more automation as well. For example, I need to only engage this doors when this goes below or above a certain temperature. The problem is, how do we detect when it's done that? We could put a sensor right here. Maybe some playing around. I just got to stick in some sensors and then we can fire it up and see how it works. Almost ready to do some testing. We've just stuck in some temporary power wires just to make sure we've got that sorted. Plumbing-wise, we're just going to grab a dev pump for now. And you are going to be set to output supercoolant. Yes. Now, we need to get you onto the cooling loop. And, oh, we need to put some water in here. How much water are we going to stick into this section? I'm thinking probably a ton. A ton of water is what I usually go with for this sort of stuff. And we'll just sample it from there, stick in 1 ton of water. We'll see how that works out. And then, oh, and utilities-wise, we are going to need a temperature shift plate. I'll go with diamond. And it's going to dump it in there, but there's nothing actually pushing temperature into those tiles, so that should be grand. 169 degrees is a little low. We're trying to boil naphtha here. Its vaporization point is 538 plus a couple of degrees, so 545. Let's go with 545 for now. We'll fine-tune this later on, but for now we want to make sure things work out the way they're supposed to. You're set to 169. That's because we want to freeze methane. Basically, the output of this wants to be cold enough to freeze the methane that's going to end up over here. I think that's about right. And then we just got to fill up this loop. So you can go on there. Give me some supercoolant, please. There you go. And then we'll disconnect that. That's going to cool it down until it hits 169 or 545. Actually, no, both of them. That's an OR gate. So I'm just going to let this spin up and see what happens. Might take a minute. I just want to make sure that nothing overheats. This might cause a problem where... Actually, no. I don't think it can. Unless it can't cool down this enough. Ooh. Let's just wait. And we're done. I think. Yep. Everything's up to temp. A little bit over temp. You are at the correct temperature as well. I think we can start dumping in the plastic. Oh, and does that mean... Yeah, supercoolant's still flowing, so there was no breaks in the flow? In that case, I would like you to get plastic, please. Now, that plastic should get in there. I should get metered out to 1 kilo of plastic. Oh, this is a conveyor meter. You can set it to allow X amount of units in before deactivating. All we've done is set it to 1 kilo, and then on the automation ports, we've just linked them. So if you link the automation ports on it, it suddenly becomes, well, a meter, which allows you to meter it anywhere between 1 to 20 kilos of product. Now, you... Yep, I've done that wrong, haven't I? It stopped. It shouldn't have stopped. You should be deconstructed. And give me a minute to remove some stuff here. Little bit of a change. Damn it, wrong way. Little bit of a change. We'll put you like that. Clean that up. And yeah, now this should only be temporary. Yeah, there we go. One blob of liquid goes up. That is... what's the liquid contents? 1 kilo of liquid naphtha. That falls down, immediately flashes to sour gas. Perfect. Slowly but steadily this should work. Then that gets pumped through here. Ooh. Did I put flow control on this? Actually, no, it's not going to be 1 kilo. I keep forgetting. When you convert naphtha to sour gas, you're going to get some methane left behind. Or not methane, sulfur. So that sulfur is going to be left behind here. Sorry. When you convert the sour gas to methane, it leaves some sulfur behind. So you only get 33% of the amount. So, like, 666 grams? You know what, let's make that 667, just in case people are suspicious or have seen the movie Damien too many times. Right, this might take a minute. Yeah, that stuff's not chilling very fast. I suppose it's pulling it out of this, but we might want to, like, currently I'm using a temperature shift plate made out of gold. I might want to change that. There we've got our sulfur. More sulfur. Anyone give us some liquid methane? Hey, where's the rest of my plastic? No power because I cut the wire. Right, sorry, my bad. Well, first problem we seem to have is, okay, here. The plastic is going through there. It's turning into naphtha, which is fine. It's getting sucked up by the pump, but unfortunately it's leaving these empty baskets behind. And until those empty baskets hit the entrance to a conveyor bridge, they don't disappear. So, we need to make some minor changes here to make sure they disappear earlier so that we can keep a more consistent flow. There, now they'll just go up and across. This should mean that the moment they turn right here, they should just vanish off the network. Yep, there we go. And that allows new stuff to slide in immediately. Alright. Systems, we still... oh, we've actually got some natural gas. Alright, that means occasionally we get a few blobs in. System's going to need some time to heat up. Well, heat up, cool down, well, stabilize. So we're going to give this a bit. And you, what temperature are you? You're 39 degrees. Okay, so not much counterflow going on right now in terms of the opposite direction, is there? You guys are coming in at 200 degrees. Ooh, 300 in cases. And you, I should probably turn this off now that I think about it. I need to put in something so that it leaves a pool of methane behind. I remember this now. You want a pool of methane so that it stabilizes the temperature in this room. So if we disable you for a minute, we're going to disable that building until we get a pool of methane built up in there. A little bit of a modification over here to increase the amount of metal tiles that the plastic has to pass through. This actually speeds up the input. This is not really able to keep up with it, the input, so I think I'm just going to turn it on. I'm going to enable the building. We're going to just start pumping the methane the moment it shows up, if we can. And leave it at that, and then see if the system stabilizes at all. Well, it hasn't quite stabilized. Problem is we can't get the plastic to melt consistently. We need this plastic to melt on the first rotation. So I've started expanding this out. I think I'm going to have to expand this out again. We may need to triple layer this. Give me a minute. There we go. We'll triple layer the heat exchanger, the counterflow heat exchanger. So this way, the liquid's counterflowing against it will heat up the plastic as it goes in. Now, the hope here is that that will speed up the plastic's melting so that it will continuously melt without us having to... Yeah, that's exactly what we want. We want it to... Still pausing. Alright, we'll let it run for a bit more and maybe it'll even out. So, I figured what's happening here is this stuff's not heating up fast enough. So, it's not getting down to the end and melting instantly. So what I thought I'd do is I'd try something a little, lazy. So what I've done instead is this natural gas we're getting out, it comes out at about 200 degrees. What if we link that up with the room that's actually pumping in the plastic? Actually, I should probably put in a door system so that it won't completely cause everything. Like, otherwise it's going to overheat this plastic and cause it to start melting. That would be bad. Now, the plastic on the ground, that doesn't care. That stuff, the temperature and it's not going to move. I mean, because plastic has terrible thermal conductivity. However, I placed this plastic in a sort of a thermium conveyor loader, which, actually, now that I think about it, the real limiter here is this limiter liquid valve. What if we use the outgoing gas, we left that around the plastic and caused that to melt large quantities of plastic all the time? Like, we don't actually need to be measuring in 1 kilo per second. The only limiter is the actual liquid pump down. Yeah. What am I doing? Make this 2 kilos per second. And then we can have a cutoff once it hits a certain height. Let's see if this works. This thing seems to have actually stabilized. I put back in those tiles because I was doing some experiments, and this has actually stabilized quite a bit. I put in some extra plastic in here to just give ourselves a little bit of pool at the bottom, but I don't think it was even necessary. This thing is, because it's not actually going through there, it seems to be working. The counterflow has finally caught up with the incoming gas. So if we check the overlay here, there's a constant 667 grams of liquid methane going the opposite direction. Nope, look, tiny break. Then it builds up again. And tiny break. Oh, no, I think we might be falling down the sink. How's the plastic looking? Just so long as the plastic doesn't stutter. That's all that matters. So long as there's the same amount of plastic being added at all times. And that seems to be working. It's kind of surprising. Normally your first design is an absolute hodgepodge. Okay, it is a hodgepodge, but normally it doesn't work perfectly. You do have to do some changes to it. But that looks like it's actually stabilized, or enough that you wouldn't get maybe the full 667 grams, but pretty close. And it's not compact enough. We need to compactify this, and I think we could make this a little bit longer to make it more efficient. What are you running at? You're running at 80% in the last 5 cycles. That's too much. We need to cut down the activity on this a little bit as well. And I think I can compress some of this in here. We got a bunch of empty space. Maybe make this a little bit longer. Maybe improve the efficiencies here and there. And I think we can recycle the heat of the natural gas, the outbound natural gas. We can use that to actually preheat the plastic up to just before melting point. There's a few ideas I have here on how to make this more efficient. Let's just chuck in another design over here. This is the new and, well, I'm not going to say actually improved. And how did that break over there? Something popped. That shouldn't even be possible. It should never be over 667 grams. Okay, insulated liquid pipe is awaiting repairs. How? You know what? Not going to worry about it. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. And over here, yeah, everything's still going on. All right. So right now I'm just prepping this. I've put in a ton of water here. There's 2 tons of water. It's got to cool down. And I'm treating this like a cold start, as in we were doing this in a normal playthrough. So I figure 1 ton of water in here should be able to freeze down both of these to about minus 180 before this thing hits 555. Hopefully. If not, I can put in more than a ton of water. This thing's going to be a slow thing to warm up because we need these blocks of ice here. Though I may be able to get rid of those. I'm still treating this like it's a tiny build. Though I suppose it's not that tiny, is it? It's a pretty chunky build, but I'm using a lot of gold. I'm not using a lot of thermium. I'm using only a little bit of thermium over here. A little bit of thermium right there. This is all gold. This is thermium, but that's about it. Oh, and that piping. So I want to make this as cheaper is what the plan. It doesn't need to be this cheap. We've got the resources to make it. I just want to make it so that we can put down lots of these if we wanted to. I made a tiny mistake explaining this. I forgot to point out, this thing has no way, we have no way of injecting cooling into this. The only way this is cooled is if we put in, well, basically naphtha. That's it. So basically, this has to cool down to the maximum temperature it possibly can before this overheats. If this thing gets to 555 degrees before this gets set to minus 180, then we run into problems. Which is why we're okay with this taking a little bit of time to spin up. Now that that's done, let's get prepped for putting in the plastic. Well then, plastic. Why don't you get on there? You should immediately get limited to 1 kg packets. Perfect. You're going to go through the counterflow heat exchanger. Now, it's going to take you a while to build up. Oh, I've messed up here. So you should go across here. Had to do a little bit of fiddling around, but yeah, got that working now. Let's speed up time a little bit. Now, I've set this to only kick in once it hits about 50 kilos of pressure in that tile. That should take care of any problems. Of course, it will take a while before it actually spits out any naphtha to get processed. But, come on. So the weird thing is, I hadn't anticipated this, the naphtha, some of it's melting it over here, and since it's such a viscous liquid, a whole bunch of it's ending up on top. So this has got 53, this is 70. It's actually got the least amount over this end, or it did anyway. Okay, but now it's actually started pumping, right? Yeah, there we go. Now that's going down here. That's flashing to sour gas. Sour gas is being forced up and into this area. These gas pumps are picking it up, sending it through here. Then it goes down here, flashes to methane. That gets pumped right back out again. And that's actually much more stable already, and we've only just started the sucker. Okay, then it comes down over here and gets dumped into this section. Now it's already 50-60 degrees. Oh, the temperature in here is above. Yeah, 159. So what's going to happen here is this is going to get hotter and hotter, and as it does, we're going to drag the temperature up in here, up until it's about 150-ish, or 156. And that should mean all the plastic that's in here should slowly start to go up in temperature. So we have plastic that's at 20°C, and it should keep going up slowly but surely. Let's let that run for a while and see what happens. Maybe I should make a way for this to... Yeah, I'm going to have to make some sort of bleed off here. I don't want this backing up while I'm letting it run. This is actually working out really good. I had a little bit of a mistake there where I put a temperature shift plate right there and it was causing some problems, but I removed that, cleaned up the sour gas, and... yeah, this thing worked out perfectly. We just turned it on. It started working almost immediately. It's a little bit bulkier than I'd like. It's not also quite inside the 4-tile high design. I wasn't planning that at the time, but... yeah, this works out pretty nicely. We could also crank it up one more tile, but maybe that might improve the efficiency too much. By and large, this thing worked out great. Now, over here, this isn't getting as hot as I'd like. I'd like this to go up to about 150 degrees, but that could take some time. What I've started doing is piping through the output methane. So that methane is 130 degrees, and it's going through here. But look at this, it's almost a consistent flow. I mean, there's the odd break here and there, so I'd have to do some testing to see what the actual output is. But it seems to be processing almost 1 kilo of plastic per second. You can see it here. There seems to be no cutoffs on the line. As well as that, the methane is coming through so hot. What is it, 313 degrees-ish? That sometimes, occasionally, plastic there just melts. You'll see that there, that one there just melted and dropped straight down. Now, what you could do is put in a backlog, or... like, we could start dumping in 2 kilos of plastic per second using the sensor. There's other things we could do, but I think I'm kind of happy with this. I'm going to have to do a bunch more testing, though. Like, I mean, I need to let this run for about 100 cycles to make sure it doesn't have any nasty problems. And maybe compress it down a little bit more. Or I could just make a giant one. A giant one that processes the 8.4 kilos or so we need per minute. That would actually probably be smaller, but that would be... or much larger, but... overall, it'd take up less space than making, say, 8 of these. If we stamp down 8 of these, it'll give us quite a power footprint. But this, I suppose, is scalable and might actually be usable by someone bar me. Well, cycle 52, and this still seems to be working. I think we've definitively proven it can be turned on and will work. Now see what happens if we turn it off. If we turn it off, will anything break? Oh, yeah, it's still going to go through a few kilos, but that's grand. Now what I'm going to do is let it run out of everything that's being processed through it, and once that's done, turn it back on again and see if anything goes wrong. And I want these to be turned on and turn offable. I don't want them to have them as ones that you just have to turn on and leave them on. I want them to be flexible, let's just say. Well, we're down to some grams of sour gas in here, so I think we can call that definitively done. So let's just chuck it back on again. And it might take a minute to kick into gear. So the first few... or... where is... oh, never mind. It's fine. I think some of the plastic melted in the middle there and then just vanished into the ether. Just disappeared. Okay, starting to kick on. Oh, I want to do something here. I'm deconstructing this tile, so in case we have some plastic melting there and vanishing, I'd like to see if that's happening. But for now, we'll just let this thing catch back up and see how it goes. It broke! It broke! You'll never guess what broke it. I didn't see it coming. There is a tiny blob of liquid methane here, but it's 37.3 grams. So it's so tiny, it can't exchange temperature with anything. And then over here, we have 20 kilos of sour gas, and it can't get out to get cooled. So, if we were to say, get a temperature shift plate, put it right... Actually, no, I can't put a temperature shift plate there, then these two will start fighting. What I need to do is maybe deconstruct that tile. Done. And now we should be back to working again. The sour gas breaks out, sour gas starts getting processed. Yep, that's looking more normal. I think I'm going to have to stop this because the sour gas up here is overpressurized to over 50 kilos. Yeah, it took me a while to notice what was going on. So, you know what? We will let the plastic go out of the system and then we'll let it catch up on all that sour gas. So we'll stop it again and then we'll start it and see if we have any breaks the second time round. Right, this time, don't break. Now, I'm pretty sure what's happened here is some of this plastic is melting in these tiles because it's so hot. And you can see here that, yeah, the plastic's melting at some points along here. So we're actually wasting plastic while it does it. What? That thing changed to a weird color. Metal tile minus 273.2. Why did you do that? And yeah. So the plastic is melting in there occasionally. But this should catch up now. And I think that tile's broken. Yeah, that tile is busted. The metal tile says it's minus 273.2. That shouldn't be possible. I don't know. I don't know if that's a debug thing or that will actually happen if we use this design in the game. You know what? We'll just have to wait and see, I suppose. I think we're back up to speed pretty much immediately. Yeah, this design just works. We are losing a little bit of plastic, I think. You know what? Let's deconstruct this tile again. I want to see if we're losing any plastic up here and if that's going to... because that would affect productivity. If we're losing the odd kilo of plastic, that means it's going to mess with the numbers. So I figure what's happening here, this is 290, 270, 260. If it's melting, it's going to be melting in probably this tile. If it is, it'd pop out here. Actually, let's just open all of it up. Oh, there we go. So, how is that happening? Was it this one? It had to be this one. So that tile is getting just that little bit too hot occasionally. And that's resulting in a tiny bit of plastic being lost. That's going to mess with our numbers. I'm trying to figure out how we make sure that doesn't happen again. I'm not sure. You know what? There'll be a little bit of pipe damage. But that should take care of the problem, right? Oh, and I let some sour gas out. That was sloppy. Oh! Sour gas is appearing in here. I thought it was because I had 2 metal tiles, but I reduced it to 1. I messed around. No, hasn't been working. You know what? Let's try this. Maybe it's because it's coming up and it's too low down. That might be it. We'll have to remove the vacuum, of course, or the sour gas, of course. Yeah, we're good. Then we'll have to turn this off and on again. Though I have come up with a new off and on switch. Basically, up here, it turns off the conveyor loader and it turns off the gas pumps. So we can pause the thing mid-whatever, and then we can turn it back on again as we wish. Nope, still more sour gas. This one didn't get any sour gas. This one did. I'm not sure exactly what changed. Yeah. More testing required. Okay. I think I figured out what happened. What happened was, well, the same thing that's happening over here. I put in 1 kilo of water in all of these tiles. And sometimes the water gets a little bit wonky and a few grams of water end up touching this metal tiles so that this whole thing starts to drain heat out of this section. And or chill. And because it's draining the chill out, this switches on because the automatic sensor goes, hey, we need to pump more chill in there to keep that old thing cold, otherwise we're not going to be making the methane. And because that turns on, this thing overheats. It goes above its target temperature of 155. And when it goes above the target temperature, well, then this thing over here causes the plastic, when it's passing through it, to flash to sour gas instead of just turning straight into liquid naphtha. I think. So, I'm going to have to turn it on and off a couple of times more again just to be sure, but I think that should be the final kink. No, I just saw both of those tiles light up. The problem with turning it off and on again is plastic melts. You see, when we turn it off, this methane here keeps flowing along and it overheats all these tiles. And when it overheats all these tiles, that causes them so that when the plastic comes through the next time round, it melts in random places, breaking the tile system, which makes this thing ineffective. Like, that metal tile is now trapped at minus 273.2. I think if we restart the game, that would fix itself, though. Yep. That worked. The moment we restarted the game, everything went back to normal. So all I gotta do now... Oop, dismissed. All I gotta do now is figure out how do I make sure that no sour gas gets in there. I think what I may need to do is, well, put in a heat injector, something like this, mechanized airlock or something along those lines to control the heat temperature. It's just otherwise I... Oh. What happened there? Back up in the system. I also might want to put in an overflow. Like, this is the problem with when you want to turn things on and off. There's going to be so many extra things. I like the ones you turn them on, you never touch them again, and they just stay on forever. It's usually simpler. This whole turning them on and off thing means we're going to have to put in a whole bunch more automation. For example, we could put in automation along here. That means when we turn off the system, this stuff, instead of going through the counterflow heat exchanger, would just immediately get dumped off into this section. That way it bypasses this and we won't end up overheating it. But we'll have to make sure that when that happens, we turn off, like, the switch happens simultaneously. Yeah, this is going to get weird. I think I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to move this all up a few tiles, and then we're going to put a door system underneath it here. And we can use the heat from this to heat the bottom of the plate so that all of the plastic will get heated that way. Also, we'll leave an entire gap down one side. We'll narrow this down by one whole tile. And we'll just have the plastic come straight down, and if any of it melts at any point, it will just get shunted out of the side. Now, we'll have to brute force a bit more. We'll be burning off a little bit more heat here, but I think we can afford it. Right now, the thing is, I took out some of these liquid vents because it was making the system too efficient. So, with this height, that means if this starts becoming too inefficient from all the heat we're dumping into the plastic, we can just chuck in a few extra liquid vents to make it, to bring it up to speed. Yeah, but I'm like miles too late. That's what you get when you start playing around with these. We would be finished if we didn't have to have an on and off switch. It's not necessary, it's just... actually, why am I doing on and off switch again? Oh yes, so that you can turn them on and off if people want to. Personally, I think you should just turn it on and be done with it, but I suppose plastic is not... It's not one of those super renewable resources. I want this to be something someone could use to just, you know, melt some plastic sometime, just to have that extra power, and then if they don't need it, they can turn it off and only turn it back on again when they need it. Just in case they don't have the mass plastic production we've been doing. Right, okay, I gotta stop modifying this and settle on a design, but this time what I did was, I got rid of the middleman. Because this was flashing it, why not just continue on? Instead of having it stop here, have it continue on into the actual heating chamber. Now, I tried dropping it in, that didn't work very well, but if we cycle it in here the exact same way we were doing before through the metal tile, then occasionally it flashes, or it turns into naphtha and comes at this side, at which point it flashes up. Or it gets all the way to the end sometimes, and when it does, it, well, flashes. Also, as well as that, sometimes the this plastic flashes here on this metal tile, at which point it drops down, this liquid pump picks it up. We don't even have a flow control on this. We just say, off you go, fire it over there, and it acts as a bead pump to push up the sour gas. This just simplifies things. In fact, we may be able to simplify this down even further if it wasn't for the fact that I should have had this video released already, and I gotta stop getting distracted. There's too many design choices, isn't there? There always is. I know I'm supposed to get this video out, but this is just... it comes in here, I then preheat it to all of the natural gas we've already collected. So by the time the plastic passes through that, it's already up to about 50 degrees, which it should be at if we're producing the plastic. Well, actually, yeah, we're going to have to produce the plastic in a plastic press. Don't know what the Drecos come out at. You know, not going to worry about it. But then it passes through these, which are getting preheated by the exit methane. And then it comes down here where this is a big metal tile. So it's drawing heat out of this section. And I'm not sure, this is probably not super efficient, but it comes down here, gets flashed, and then immediately gets pumped out. We don't even have any kind of flow control. Maybe I should put a little bit of flow control on this. Actually, no, I won't be able to fit it in there with all those pipes going through there. Okay. So you can see that the conveyor rail is... Wow, it's empty by the time it gets there. That's perfect. Yeah, I might be overheating stuff a bit, though. What's the natural gas coming out at? Probably a little bit too hot. 180 degrees, yeah, that's a scooch hot, but it's fine, it's fine. As long as this works, that's actually all that matters. The question is, I don't know if we can cold start it. No. I'm out of time. I need to... It's way too late. Alright, I'm going to go and do some more fiddling with this in the background. Next episode, I won't show that what I've settled on. I'll actually just build it inside the save. What we can do is we can modularly add one of these, start chucking in plastic, and then that will give us about 5.5 kilowatts of power. So about, say, 2.5 petroleum generators worth. So if we build 2 of these, we'll have more than enough power to keep us going for probably till the end of the game, to be honest. But we're just going to keep stacking on more and more of them. So we will have to build a little natural gas generator thing beside. You know what? We can worry about that later. For now, I need to get this out the door. Anyway, I'm going to cut this out here. I hope you enjoyed, and good luck.